Welcome back to the Loud Little Ducky. We are going over Officer Barros' testimony. He is the police officer from Dighton Police Department. He was there when Proctor and Buchanan went to Dighton, which is Karen Reed's parents, to collect her vehicle. And they were in Barros' jurisdiction. And so Barros met them out there. Um, and so last year, he was a Commonwealth witness. This year, defense. So, he is not connected with MSP or Canton PD. He comes into this case by getting a call at 2:30 p.m. Saying that the troopers called about a vehicle in his jurisdiction and they were interested in getting the vehicle. Proctor said the vehicle was involved in a homicide, which is interesting that by 2:30, Proctor, not being out to 34 Fairview and not seeing the vehicle yet, has just seen John O'Keefe and has just heard things from Jennifer McCabe. Now at 2:30, he says that this vehicle is involved in a homicide. No taillight pieces have been recovered. So by 2:30 p.m., Proctor thinks he has this thing figured out, even though he hasn't investigated shit. So Barros gets there about 3 p.m. Proctor was about 10 minutes away from Karen Reed's parents' house. Barros arrived at 3:27 p.m. He didn't know personally Karen Reed's parents or Karen Reed. He had heard the name and that address before because Karen Reed's father, William Reed, called Dighton PD at about 8 a.m. about Karen, and for her to be sectioned because she was talking about self-harm. And so that's all he knew about this particular place and about the Reed people. He says that MSP, Buchanan, and Proctor, they wanted to seize Karen Reed's vehicle, and Barros needed to facilitate a F1. He needed to facilitate a tow for the vehicle that they were wanting to get for Karen Reed's vehicle. He drove to the scene in his Ford F-150 police vehicle, and he did see the black Lexus. Barrow spoke with Karen Reed's mom. He was outside when Proctor and Buchanan were inside. He saw damage to the right rear taillight with a crack and a piece missing. And a cracked and a piece missing is what he said last year in trial 1. And last year, a lot of the people were like, see, he didn't say the whole thing was busted out, that it was just cracked and a piece missing. Other people described it as a crack or it was like broken a little bit. And then this year they were like, no, it's all busted out. Barros um, still stuck with the crack and a piece missing. Says that it was about, 6 inches, long and about 2 to 3 inches wide, about the size of a dollar bill. And then he is shown this, which is going to be from the taillight. So he was shown this, and they asked him, "Is this what you saw?" And Barros said, "No, that is not what he saw. That thing is completely busted out. There was just a little sliver, maybe a piece here or this piece here." I don't really remember where he was pointing to, but it wasn't completely broken out like this. Um, which last year nobody showed him that. He did say that. Where did it go? Oh no, dang it. He did say that this, where the tail light is up here, looked similar to what he saw when it was towed. And Hank will bring up some questions in regards to this in his cross. So let me make sure we find exactly where Hank asks him so that we can bring. Okay. So I have that ready when we need to go. Um, the main portion was intact, but a side piece below the red piece still there. And he was in around the vehicle and that tail light for about 20 minutes. Barros left at 4:17 p.m. Um, they zoomed into a video of the vehicle. Um, Diamond Towing is the people who towed it. Um, and so that's pretty much what AJ wanted, to show that this was not what it looked like when he towed it. Somebody who's not in cahoots with MSP or Canton PD, an outside officer comes in and says, "This is not what it looked like." So Hank gets up for cross and he says he doesn't know the family to this day. Um, that Proctor and Buchanan was already at Karen Reed's parents' house when he got there. And, Hank was like, "Well, did you see them tamper with the taillight at Karen Reed's parents' house?" No. No, he didn't see them tamper with it. Why would they tamper it with somebody else there? They would take it back to the Sally Port and do it there. Um, but there was damage to the right rear tail light. Um, he s- he said, "When was the first time you spoke to Alan Jackson?" And he said, "I spoke to Alan Jackson in person after the first trial in early 2025, in a hotel conference room." He said Miss Little was there and another gentleman, but he's not sure but it wasn't David Yannetti. Um, and Hank tries to make this big deal. "Oh, you think it's weird that they want you to go to a hotel to meet them?" And he's like, "No, it was like a conference room." Like, Alan Jackson is from Los Angeles, and so he's gonna be at a hotel unless he rents an Airbnb. and they met in a conference room, which is, I believe, where they've been set up at this particular hotel. It's been like their headquarters somewhat, um, but held the meeting there. But he's like, "Oh, not like weird. Like, do you meet other people at hotel rooms?" Like, it was a conference room. He says, it was cracked with a piece missing, but not completely damaged. He has seen things in the media, and um, he talks about, well, weren't you asked, were you shown were you shown that picture last year and you said that? And Barrows thought that he might have been shown that picture last year at the trial. Turns out he didn't. Maybe he saw it with Lally in the um prior to trial. Maybe Lally showed it to him then and asked him about it. Don't know. But Hank got the guy to say, "Yeah, I guess I didn't see it last trial." And so that's Hank's way of discrediting this guy. See, he can't even remember if he was shown a photo last year, um, or not. And we want to believe that he knows what this taillight looks like. His testimony hasn't changed. He has said that it's a cracked with a piece missing, and this is not what it looked like. And then Hank shows him the video of 507, and all I can say is, look at all that red. That's a lot of red for taillights being busted. And he goes through parts of that. Um, we'll show this. This looks like a house light that's on this taillight right here, but this is red, and that's interesting because this is not none of this is supposed to be red because this is all busted out according to what it looks like in the Sally port. And then he moves it forward a little bit. Still a little weird to see, but we've still got a lot of red over here. And then you move it up just a bit more, or does he cut it off there? Let's see here. I guess that's as far as he goes. He doesn't let it go any further. And then he brings up this picture and says, "Is this consistent with what you saw that morning?" And he said, "It looks like there's snow impacted on it on here." Um, and you really can't see the side too much from this angle. But he's like, "Yes, that's consistent." So, but he says the Sally port isn't consistent. And I don't know if they show him any more pictures. But so that's his testimony about that. That it didn't look like it did in the Sally port. Those other pictures could look consistent to what the tail light looked like when he saw it. Um, um, Alan Jackson gets back up and asks, "Why didn't you take a picture of the Lexus?" And he said, "Well, I wasn't the one seizing the car. I was just there because it was my jurisdiction." Um, nobody else took a picture of it either, from what he knew. And then he also asks him about his report. "You could have been more thorough in your report, but all you put, was there was some damage to the right rear tail light." And he's like, "I was just writing a report and it wasn't my vehicle I was seizing." Um, and that he should have been more specific before, and he's just saying this now and all this stuff. And "Oh, the Commonwealth called you last year." Well, yeah, Commonwealth did call him to testify last year for their case. Lally did. Commonwealth never reached back out to him for this trial. The defense did. So after the bad testimony that the Commonwealth knew that it was bad, the whole cracked with a piece missing, Commonwealth was like, "Oh, we can't call that dude again." And the defense was like, "Yes, we are calling this guy in trial. I don't care if we have to call him." So the defense called him. So then, before he testified for the defense, he met up to meet the defense for the first time outside of last year because he didn't get cross-examined last year. So the defense didn't even talk to this guy last year, not even during a cross-examination because he wasn't crossed. So the defense's first time talking to him was when they called him, said, "Hey, you can meet me here." And they went over scheduling to, "Hey, will you testify? What did you see?" Um, and how they could get a subpoena to him or where he should be served. But they were like, "Oh, you're from Dighton." I don't remember if he said that he lived in Boston, but he worked in Dighton, and or Boston isn't that big of a drive to Canton or wherever. There was some talk about some of that, Boston and Canton and Dighton. Um, but either way, he met up with them at that hotel conference room with Miss Little there and somebody else there, and the Commonwealth never asked to speak to him again, which to me is telling. The jury doesn't know how all that went down, and they may not know what the difference is in, "Oh, you were a Commonwealth witness last year, but you're a defense witness this year." The jury may not understand that, but if they do, that's a big deal. So that is Barros. He's a very neutral witness. He just came in and said what he saw. And some a little bit of background on Barros is that Barros doesn't isn't a person who would want to come in and necessarily help a drunk driver. He just will come in and speak to things. He's going to speak to the truth. But if you think he's advocating for things, you are sorely mistaken, Hank Brennan. Hank Brennan also asked this witness, "So do you have a problem with your memory?" Um, and you know what? Barros was hit by a drunk driver sometime recently. Um, I don't know if he had a concussion or anything like that after being hit by a drunk driver. So maybe he does have some issues somewhat with his memory. Um, or maybe Hank Brennan's questioning is so confusing and the gaslighting that he does, Barros thought, "Well, he keeps asking me questions about something that maybe I did testify to that," after he said no. Um, but Barros is not pro drunk driving. I think he's just justice and an honest man. But y'all take with that what you will, and I will see you in the next video for our next witness. Bye.